We are in a dark confessional. A man is kneeling down. His voice was trembling, but his words were cold and distant. He had just entered his wife's room. The woman was exhausted, unable to move from fatigue. Her heart was screaming, no, at that moment. But the man, having put on the wedding ring, used his wife as if she were his property. "You are my wife," he said. "Your body belongs to me. This is a duty you must fulfill. You owe me." And that night, coercion reigned, not love. After completing his act, the man came to Padre Pio's presence to relieve his conscience. "Padre," he asked, "did I fall into sin?" The answer he expected was a whisper of merciful forgiveness. But Padre Pio's response was like thunder: "You did not commit a sin, you committed a crime. You attacked your own wife. This is rape." Yet even today, in modern Catholic circles, that toxic debate echoing for centuries continues: the marital debt. Defenders of this old understanding claim that the moment the marriage is performed, the body ceases to be an individual entity. The promise you gave your spouse is an unlimited surrender, they say. When he desires, you have no right to object. So, does this heavy teaching truly reflect the light of Holy Scripture? The answer to this complex question is a single word standing at the center of Padre Pio's entire spiritual life: love. Marriage is not a partnership claimed with a deed of ownership, but a holy covenant of love in which souls and bodies participate. And let's not forget, true love demands not submission, but freely offering oneself. It never uses force. The words in St. Paul's famous letter to the Corinthians have unfortunately been used like a sword throughout history: the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. 1 Corinthians 7 verse 4. For centuries, they read this expression like property law. However, Paul was describing not a state of owning, but a mutual and generous invitation of self-giving. This was a call for equality, not a declaration of sovereignty. In the period Padre Pio lived, the Church's legal interpretations of marriage hadn't fully matured yet. Traditional laws argued that once married, consent was automatically assumed for every future sexual union. This logic completely disregarded human dignity, but Padre Pio saw behind the masks on people's faces. He heard the cry of cruelty happening in the dark corners of the marriage bed in the confessional. Women coming in tears asked, "Padre, my husband uses me like an object, forces me even though I don't want to. Is this a sin?" Padre Pio's answer was clear, compassionate, but earth-shattering: yes, this is a heavy violation against God's laws. You may have duties to your husband, but his duty is to show unconditional respect to your human dignity. Because the institution of marriage is the most concrete reflection on earth of the sacrificial love Jesus Christ felt for the Church, Christ never put his beloved bride, the Church, under pressure. He invites, waits patiently at the door, calls gently, but he never enters by force. Pope Paul VI used a striking expression when defining marriage in his famous encyclical Humani Vitae: marriage is a special form of friendship. Husband and wife share everything wholeheartedly, without unjust reservations, generously. Notice, generously. This means freely. A gift coming from the heart, not from obligation. Pope John Paul II carries this thought to the peak in his work Love and Responsibility. He states that consent is an absolute condition for every act, even in the marriage bed. Every sexual union that takes place without consent, even if you have a legal bond, is rape. Some immediately object: what about St. Paul's word, "Do not deprive one another, so that Satan may not tempt you," 1 Corinthians 7 verse 5. Yes, Paul said this. But look at immediately before it: he conditioned that even this separation could happen only by mutual agreement, that is, the free will of both sides is fundamental for union. Moreover, Paul emphasized that he did not make this a universal and absolute law by saying, "I say this by way of concession, not of command." Regarding even this advice, Padre Pio constantly advised his married spiritual children, embrace each other with deep love. Protect each other's honor, always seek the good of your spouse. This teaching offers a much higher moral ground than that old debt mentality. True love thinks of sacrificing itself rather than demanding its own rights. That if a husband truly loves his wife with his heart, he notices the burden on her shoulders, the fatigue in her soul. He puts her health and inner peace before his own desire. At that moment, restraining his own desire is love itself. Because love is sacrifice, however, today's cultural currents whisper the exact opposite to us. The industrial poison of pornography reduces women to mere objects of gratification. It instills the lie in men that they have the right to take what they want. And this poison unfortunately leaks into the marriage beds we accept as most holy. The numbers are terrifying. In the United States, approximately 10 to 14% of married women have been subjected to sexual violence by their own husbands. More than a third of these victims have experienced this horror more than 20 times. This is not a holy union, but captivity within four walls. Padre Pio listened to these silent tragedies in the confessional. He saw not only the bruises on the body but also the deep tears in the souls, the traces of cruelty, the humiliation brought by coercion. But not only women were coming, sometimes men who were rejected by their wives and were desperate also came. "Padre, my wife turns her back on me. She shows no interest in me, what should I do?" Padre Pio's advice was both hard and deep: continue to love her. Put on the shield of patience, never use force. Do not stop praying. In marriage, physical union is not an obligation, but a mutual gift offered between spouses, and gifts cannot be obtained by threat or force. They gain value when offered freely. Pope John Paul II was uncompromising on this. Even within the marriage bond, the sexual act not based on consent is a heavy violation of the covenant of love. He did not hesitate to clearly call this situation marital rape. Because marriage does not give you an authority of ownership, it is a holy covenant built on mutual respect and love. The Second Vatican Council radically changed this shallow understanding. The Council defined marriage no longer as a legal agreement but as a deep union of love between persons. This definition shuts the door on all forms of coercion. Dedicating yourself to the one across from you is the work of your free will. You cannot take this by force. Padre Pio showed married couples with what spirituality they should approach their spouses. Love your wife with the respect shown to the Virgin Mary, and your husband with the sacrifice of Saint Joseph. How did Joseph love Mary? With unconditional reverence, indescribable kindness, and vast patience. He demanded nothing from Mary, on the contrary, he served her. This is the true face of holy marital love. Some worry immediately: what if the man's desire becomes overwhelming? What if Satan tempts him unbearably? Padre Pio's prescription in this situation was simple but powerful: pray. Seek refuge in the holy sacraments, control yourself. God's grace will give you strength. No human is created so weak that they cannot sustain their life without sexual union. Unfortunately, today's perverted culture lies to men: sexuality is a basic need. This is Satan's biggest trick. The truth is, sexuality is a communion, and communion is the union of two free persons. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops published a warning regarding domestic violence. The Church does not accept any form of violence. And they add, assault within marriage is one of the most severe forms of violence. Pope Francis is clear on this in Amoris Laetitia: we must say no to violence in the home always, without exception. The excuse, "I am her husband," is not valid against this holy law. Padre Pio once made a meaningful comparison. Suffering is sometimes a sign of God's love, but abuse and coercion bear the signature of Satan directly. Never confuse these two concepts. Unfortunately, some religious circles still maintain that old logic of blaming the victim. Padre Pio set the bar much higher for men. He said husbands must love as Christ loved the church. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Ephesians 5 verse 25. If a husband truly loves his wife, his bodily desire stays in the background. His priority becomes his wife's peace, well-being, and health, and then, the marriage bed ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a holy temple where two free souls are gifts to each other. A couple named Paola and Giovanni Siena lived a happy marriage for 60 years trusting Padre Pio's spirituality. What was their secret? Paola said, mutual respect, prayer, and spiritual growth. Without love there is no respect, without respect there is no marriage. If a man has forced his wife, what should he do? The answer is clear: he must confess, repent truly, and never repeat it again. If a woman is forced by her husband, then she must seek help. The Church says, you do not have to tolerate domestic violence. If these words touched your soul, help us break the walls of silence by sharing this video. Maybe one person will realize that abuse is not a duty. Maybe a husband will look into his wife's eyes with respect again. Subscribe to our channel. Next week, we will focus on how saints found peace in hard times. And always remember, true love never unites with tyranny. It always demands mercy and deep respect.